our final presentation of the night. I'm very excited to introduce someone who needs no introduction. My predecessor and the active transportation manager for the City of London, Daniel Hall. For anyone who doesn't know Dan, I think he'll say a few words about himself. But he's going to talk about the stuff that's happening in the city. And I think that when the Bruntlets talk about a special sauce, I think it's happening in London. You know, there's so much energy in this group, in this room, but also on the streets. And also you can see the infrastructure being born month to month in our city. So thanks for your work, Dan, and take it away.
Right on. Thanks, Molly. I thought you guys were shooting for the stars when you invited me, but yeah, I am happy to be here, really happy to be here, and I am very inspired by just being around all of you, sort of feeling the excitement about cycling again. Sometimes it's easy to kind of just go to work every day, and as people always ask, how's the job going? And, you know, and sometimes it's just a job. It's, you know, I got to, get to the next step of design for this bike lane. But when you hear the stories and when you hear people benefiting from it, when you hear the vision of like this big picture cycling city, like more equitable, more sustainable, like that's the thing that inspires me. And so it's so exciting to be part of this and to hear all of your own personal stories too, because that's what gives me fuel. You know, when you're having a low day or when you need that sort of extra motivation to push harder, if someone's getting in your way. So,
I'll man it for
oh, you got it? Okay, yeah. Awesome. Just quickly, okay, here we go. So I'm going to quickly introduce myself again, talk about infrastructure. I think some of you are very interested in that, and quite frankly, that's primarily my role is infrastructure, delivering bike lanes and sidewalks. So that's what I know best, and that's what I'll try and communicate on. I pulled these trends together quickly, so I wouldn't say they're these great, informative, insightful themes, but they're trends out there that you might find interesting. And then we'll talk about the process of how projects come to life and how you, as community members, as advocates, can input into those decisions. So, Jack, a little bit about me. That's a picture of me. You can see me. But this is also me taking some of my colleagues out on a ride to sort of experience the infrastructure firsthand. We talk about it a lot, but I thought it was important for them to get a firsthand experience. And yeah, I, like many of you, had been riding for a while, got really excited about cycling, think it's the answer for so many of our problems, and got involved with CycleLink in the early days, and I'm so proud of where it's at, and 10 years later, and all these wonderful people who are still connected to it and who've been welcomed by this community. And I think there's so much power in this community. So I'm really excited about that. My wife was helping get some of you drinks earlier, and I have 2 young kids, and we've got the Dutch box bike, and we have a lot of fun riding bikes as a family. Recent infrastructure. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. At the end, I'm going to ask if anyone's been to all of it already. Show of hands. All right, so this is Oxford and William intersection. I was most proud of this only because it has a cool bike push button and a place to wait for cyclists, and it's just somewhat unique in London. So I'm really happy with how this design turned out, but hopefully you are too. Okay, great. Next, we have the Rideout and Commissioners intersection. So yeah, we're trying more protected intersections in the city. This fills an important gap in the Upper Queens and Rideout bike lane. So again, I had a friend who commuted here every day, and he said, I used to literally have to point, Dan, to like tell cars where I was going because they just be whipping around the corner, and he said, I don't have to point anymore. So those stories always are exciting and make me happy. And there's a picture, I don't know if you saw this online, there's a picture of a truck stuck in there. It doesn't fit a pickup truck, so that's good. We have bridges in Wavell. This was an important project for us in the East End. We got some COVID money that helped us build this faster, or at least had the money to do it. This is a picture here. The next one is a video of another former London Cycle Link. It doesn't work. Okay. Imagine Tim Pearson riding a bike in a bike lane. Next slide. This is what we talk about networks and connectivity. It's not just about a bike lane isolated on itself. It's about a network. So you can see in orange that we have the Kiwanis pathway. I'm preaching to the choir. You know all this stuff, but the fact that it connects now east-west, those red dash and green dashes on the left are completed. Those are bike lanes on bridges toward all the way to Egerton, and then we have protected bike lane on parts of bridges in Wavell, and then we have the bike lane on Saskatoon to Fanshawe College. We're eventually going to hopefully connect Clark Road to the arena and the mall. So yeah, it's all about connections, and we're excited about this project. The next one down is Queens. I got to ride this on the way here. This is a parking protected bike lane, so we use the cars sort of as helping support protection and give that space between you, the cyclist, and moving vehicles. And those bollards keep the cars out of the bike lane. So before I think that was the last one. Who's been to all those places? Yeah, wow, amazing. Okay, Queens completed the East-West Bikeway. This was a study that was done maybe 5 years ago. It was sort of the last piece of the East-West side of it, but we're not going to stop there. We're building Rideout Street. It has a gap. It's hiding the gap where that text is, but that is a big gap right now, and we're going to try and fill it, and the bridge is being worked on too. We're hoping to extend out Riverside to the west. Dundas this year is getting further to the east, and we're hoping to go north and south on Colburn. So this core cycling map will get bigger in the coming years. Next slide. Other recent projects, sorry, these are boring words, but we rehabilitated the Fanshawe Road cycle tracks. So they were kind of the old legacy infrastructure that was built in the 90s, very bumpy and not always clear what to do at intersections. So we rehabbed that, and we have plans to rehab all the other ones. There's a lot more, Wonderland especially. That's in another slide. Adelaide's on the list. It's just a couple more years away. But so we built Southdale Road. There was a road widening, but it also included cycle tracks. We have a complete streets plan that it's not every street necessarily is going to get bike lanes, but every street in the cycling master plan in like a new build format will get some type of cycling infrastructure. There's a small stub of William Street that connects better to the pathway at the end of Huron. That also has a bi-directional cycle track on it that we, it's almost finished. It's kind of, the pavement's there, but the rest of it isn't quite there. But that was a lot for what was done recently. But I want to talk about what's upcoming, because I think you're probably most excited about that. Very excited about what's coming. All right. All these green words are projects that we're hoping to do this summer. So we've got, I'm going to start in the top right, Quebec Street bike lanes. This was my commute for, 7 years or something. There's a stretch of Quebec that doesn't have any bike lanes right now. It's going to have protected bike lanes after this summer. Cheapside has had a big gap from Adelaide to Richmond. We're going to try and fill that gap this year. We're going to extend Colburn to the north. Central Ave is going to have a mixture of protected and painted bike lanes on it from Adelaide to Richmond. So that'll be right in front of Victoria Park. Platts Lane already has bike lanes, but it's going to have, when we rebuild the road, we're going to put them into the boulevards. They're going to be cycle tracks. Riverside, we're hoping to add protection to, so they're painted bike lanes right now. We're hoping to add protection to those. And then the bridge project kind of cut off there, but there's going to be bike lanes across the bridge, so that no longer will be a pinch point. And then going down, so this was kind of the focused in on the core area, or mostly core area. If you zoom or scroll down to the next page, it's a list of projects that are happening this year as well, but just sort of further out. So Bradley Cycle Track's one of my team's big projects this year. That's from Jalna West to White Oak, or to Wellington. So that's connecting the south end with a nice east-west cycle track project. And eventually, when there's like a new section of Bradley that isn't built yet, when that gets built out, that'll complete Bradley east-west. Masonville intersection is going to start this summer. It's going to have cycle tracks on Fanshawe and Richmond. It won't be finished until 2024. So I'm kind of cheating by saying it's 23, but it gets started this year. And White Oak bike lanes, there's a gap right now that we're going to fill this summer. Dingman is way out there. For those of you who go to the velodrome, you might know this. But yeah, they're multi-use paths on a road widening project in Dingman, and there is a pathway by the jail that connects there that's eventually going to all connect. And then the roundabout at Southdale and Colonel Talbot, we're going to have cycle tracks on that and further on Southdale this summer. So lots of work going on. Thankfully, they're not all my projects. They just are other people's projects that we get to add cycling stuff to. And that's kind of the exciting part about these next few years, is there's a lot of projects in the queue that have cycling components to them. So I'm pretty excited. Yeah, so this is the next list. So this is not this summer. This is like the next 2 to 3 years, I'll say. In the short term, rehabilitating the Wonderland cycle tracks that everyone knew about, that there's lots of bumps and potholes on them. Oxford, so this is connecting Fanshawe College to downtown. Rapid Transit's coming through there, and we got an opportunity to connect downtown to Fanshawe College with that. Wellington Road will have an awesome multi-use path on it, all the way from White Oaks Mall to Baseline Road to the hospital. So that'll be pretty exciting. And Western Sarnia, if everyone asks me, like, what's your number one project? This is the number one project for me. Because it fills in two really important gaps that have been there for a long time. And I know people are aware of the timeline on this project. It's painfully slow. I think the EA started in like 2015. And we're just wrapping the second round of the EA up now. But it's supposed to be built in 25. So be patient even longer, but it's a good project. Bowler trying to connect Byron with the TVP and all the way to Southdale. And then Colonel Talbot linking Lambeth with Talbot Village with sidewalks and bike lanes. So lots on the go. It's exciting. I get to see the map of what's coming, and I'm really jazzed about what's coming in the next 2 or 3 years, even this year. Some general trends. Dundas and Colburn, we had a 48% increase year over year from 21 to 22. So I think that's pretty exciting. We almost hit 600 rides on Dundas this summer. That was our peak day, but definitely people are using it. Whenever you hear that people don't use it, there's lots of riders out there. The next stat's kind of interesting. I like to include it because it doesn't tell the whole story. This is from Stats Canada. It's journeys to work only, so it only captures a portion of all trips. But in cycling circles, women can be an indicator species of how safe it feels, and often the best cycling cities, it's very even, like 50 or even women ride more than men. So it's a good indication just to be aware of where we're at. And it's kind of stayed stable in London for many years. It hasn't really gone up or down too much. But I think it's an opportunity. Another opportunity, this is from 2016, but 57% of all trips in London are less than 3 kilometers. So a huge opportunity for cycling. And then Google has some cool data about, I think they use cell phones to track how people make their trips. They track cycling distance, and in the past 4 years, from 2018 to 2021, 26% increase in cycling distance in London. So lots of positive trends, I think, and some work to do still, for sure. So in terms of how a project gets built,
Do we
yes.
have the details on percentage of trips trips in London that are taken by bicycle versus car, and any trends with regards to that?
The census data is not very exciting and not very encouraging for that stat. So that's, again, it was journeys to work, and it was in the heart of the pandemic. So not necessarily the best reliable like 2021 numbers, but yeah, usually census data were in the like 1.2 to 1.6% range. The household mobility survey, it was higher. I think it was like, might have been as high as 2% or 2.3% of trips made by bike. So still lots of room to expand that, definitely.
And the trend?
The trend?
Yeah.
These are snapshots. Like the census, it went down this year actually in 2021, which is not good. I was hoping to go up, but yeah, there's lots of factors with COVID and other things I think that maybe can explain some of that. Google, it's gone up though. That's why I chose the one that went up. Pick your data. So in terms of how projects get developed and come to life, sometimes they take time. So I'm going to walk you through the time-taking process. Usually it starts with a master plan of some sort. Not always, but usually. So we kind of have a current cycling master plan that was done in 2016. We have a current transportation master plan. We are working on our new mobility master plan, which will be all modes sort of together. So transit, cycling, walking, driving. It's an important document. It feels very abstract in the moment to say like, oh, it's just some master plan, but trust me, it's very important. It like sort of sets the stage for all the rest of it, the budgets, the what actually projects get built. So take the time now to get interested in it and make your voice heard. Budgets, again, we have a chance for multi-year budget right around now. So the city does like a 4-year budget cycle. So it's an important year this year because the multi-year budget's coming up. So I believe it's like this spring and summer will be most of the work on the multi-year budget. So that sets budget priorities for everything from like maintenance. I know someone mentioned that earlier, maintenance to capital projects like cycling to, I'm trying to think of other things, but transit, sidewalks, all that kind of stuff. So important stuff. The budget also comes out of the mobility master plan in terms of capital, like, so it funds all the projects along the way. So when you buy a new house in London, those development charges will fund part of the transportation infrastructure. So that master plan sets a lot of that groundwork of like what projects will get built and how the money will flow. So they're really critical. Once we have a budget and a project in mind, we go down to an environmental assessment, the EA. And those are for big projects, usually that involve like road widenings or some big change to either the road or the community or the landscape that needs to have an environmental assessment. A lot of the cycling projects kind of get waived or they don't need a environmental assessment. So really it's about prioritizing which cycling projects. So, you know, we'll have our master plan that'll say like these group of projects will be short term, these group of projects will be medium term, these will be long term. So again, we listen to the community. A lot of the projects we're working on right now, like Bridges Wavell, Bowler, Queens, were rooted in a community's voice that was called Safe Routes during COVID, and that there were 6 projects that came out of that got funding and design, and we're still building them right now. So, like the community can definitely have a say at that point too, in terms of like what's important, what matters now. Sort of, you know, we're flexible in some ways in those avenues, and then the project goes to detailed design. This is where often cycling advocates get involved. Is like, you know, you hear about a project on Colburn or Bowler or whatever, and that's, you know, there'll be a public meeting, and we might sit around and talk about the project specifically and what it's going to look like and design things. It's another chance to have your voice heard. It's another chance to input into the like what gets built. But often some of the other stuff ahead of upstream is almost more important. It's still important, but anyway, so that all the stars were basically places where you as a community can be involved and have a say in the projects or in what happens on our streets and how we move. And then we build it. You can have a say if you have a shovel and other things. But usually by that point, it's maybe too late.
Hey, Dan,
Yes.
how do we track those? How do we track the stages there of those projects so we know? So if you want advocacy or you'd like to be involved in that, how do we track those? Where is our who do we contact for that? Is that our counselors? Like where does that begin?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like general City of London, like question ask city at london.ca or something like that, where you could ask the status of a particular project and it would find someone like me and we'd answer you. Often if projects are sort of sitting in a master plan, but they're not quite at a stage, they like haven't moved into a design stage or a study stage yet, they just sit in a master plan. They're not, so it'd be hard to find a status on it unless you ask somebody like a counselor or whatever. Or a staff member, but once they become sort of in the project list, they often go on our Get Involved website. So there's a getinvolved.london.ca. That's usually our online forum for getting feedback on projects, and that's where you'll find the environmental assessment and the detailed design, and even things like our master plans. You'll find them on that site. We'll go to the next slide. Is a segue. The mobility master plan, it is like a 2.5 year project. We're about 1 year in, so there's still lots of time. We've kind of gone from like the very broad about learning about experiences. We met with some CycleLink volunteers to discuss the cycling experience, and we've met with lots of different community members and community groups around the city. Now we're starting to get into the specifics. So it was kind of like really broad opening. Now we're starting to get into specifics. This will replace the cycling master plan, so it will be a very important document for cycling specifically. And there's not like a specific thing I can say, we need to have your say on this right now, but in the coming months there will be more chance to speak into like what you want the bike network to look like, what streets really need it, sort of focusing priority, where it needs to go. So that's the link, but just stay with your ear to the ground on that one.